Well, today we've got the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Timothy Silva, joining us this morning to shed light on what transpired and about the oil and gas industry. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today on the program.
Good morning.
All right, so if I could just start off with what we have just read and seen in the news about many not quite happy, as reflected in the dailies, that Labour had got to suspend the strike, albeit for 2 weeks. So saying, look, they should have gone on. Does this in any way, how do you respond or react to this when you see these headlines thinking, well, actually government was getting somewhere, but people say, no, they should have gone ahead?
Well, I really am sorry that some people are disappointed, but I always tell such people that in the end it's about Nigeria. It's not about their interests. What was the interest of such people? To see the country go in flames. But of course, I really applaud the labor leaders who put Nigeria first on that negotiation table.
And then the other part is that they actually thought that the fuel price was going to be part of the considerations of what was going to be, maybe reverted to what it was before, but it stays as it is, pending when some of those palliatives, as they put it, are put in place. So could you shed some light on that? What were the considerations before they came to that sort of agreement?
No, first and foremost, I mean, we had to be very truthful about the situation today in the country and globally. The situation is that government could no longer go on with the subsidy because there simply was no money. If you have a situation where your earnings have dropped by 60%, then you have to do something about it. And we had to tell Labour, and we had to show them everything that was on the table. And they saw with us that it was not possible for us to continue. The alternative was to go back to subsidy and have scarcity, because there is no way government would have continued to subsidize that product. I mean, if you have a situation where product was imported at a certain price and sold at a subsidized rate, then it was at a loss. You knew that somebody was bearing that difference, and government was bearing that difference, and it was becoming unbearable to us because there was no way we could have funded that, and our earnings had dropped. I mean, you know exactly what has been happening. Oil prices came down. Our production actually also went down because of OPEC cuts. I mean, we are almost producing half what we used to produce and selling at less the price we used to sell it for. So in a situation like that, I think it was Labour saw the truthfulness on the part of government, and I must say that it was a painful decision. You could see it very clearly that it was very painful, but I mean, there was no other alternative left, and we had to say that to them very clearly, and we had to bite the bullet as a country.
The challenges that a number of people might have seen, Honorable Minister, is in the way the communication came to them, or the adequacy or not of the information or understanding they have of that position of government about, the hike in fuel price, hike in electricity, when there was no hike in their own income. Was the communication was faulty? Is there anything being done to communicate to the lowest echelon of people in the society so that they can take ownership of this conversation of government?
Well, I don't know about faulty communication, really. I mean, the issue is that the government announced deregulation in March this year, in the heat of the COVID-19 crisis. The problem was that at that time, the government was also being applauded because prices actually came down. And then, of course, when the prices started going up, it came to a point where the people now saw that and we already said from the beginning that the prices, when crude oil prices went up, that we will begin to see the difference at the pump. And when that happened, of course, Labour started kicking. But we had to tell them that already this decision had been taken a long time ago. So I don't know how we could have communicated. Everybody has his own opinion about how we should have communicated this, but I thought that it was in the public domain from a long time ago that government had deregulated. I mean, since 6 months ago, government had deregulated.
But then that's the thing, Honorable Minister. You thought, but the people didn't get the understanding that that is going to have such a far-reaching effect on them when crude price begins to rise. Now that the reality is there, they're feeling the pinch. So again, I ask, how do we communicate this to people so that they know that the long-term benefit, if there is any, is better than the short-term pinch that people are feeling now?
Well, we definitely realize that this entails some pain for the people, but in the end, I mean, what do? If you have a child that is ill, that needs to go for surgery, I mean, you cannot, because he's going to have pain, decide to avoid the surgery. I mean, this surgery needs to be done. This successive administrations, successive governments in this country have tried to achieve it, and it's because everybody knew that this was the way to go. Unfortunately, it was not possible at that time, but I think at this point, everybody now knows there's a consensus around it, especially among the people that are well-meaning Nigerians, that this is the way to go. And of course, I don't know exactly how you expect us to communicate this, but what we told them was that, look, we have an alternative now. If you want to create a toll gate somewhere, the law is that you create an alternative. We created that alternative. The alternative is to give another form of fuel, which is gas. And we're going to roll out that in the next few days. And we felt that that is going to cushion the effect in the long run. Apart from that, we believe that deregulation is also necessary because it's going to really grow the refining sector. I mean, if you ask the question, why has the refining sector not grown? Why have people not invested in this sector? You will realize, you will come invariably to the conclusion that it was because that sector was actually a subsidized sector, and there's nobody that will come with investment and build a refinery and then now sell the product at a subsidized rate. If you look at it, I mean, there are a lot of people who made subsidy claims. I mean, for the past 5 years, they are still waiting for their subsidies claims to be paid. I mean, you cannot invest money and expect that when you produce, you sell at a subsidy, and then you wait for government to pay you that difference, and then you wait indefinitely for that payment because the money was simply not there. It was not possible to carry on with this, and we actually told them, and we believe that well-meaning Nigerians have understood it. We understand that there is no way we can explain this to the understanding of certain people, certain naysayers. There is no way you can ever explain it to the understanding of those other people. But well-meaning Nigerians have gotten the message and are with us.
You know, I think well-meaning Nigerians will also like to know if the government is still subsidizing petrol in any way.
Well, I don't know what other definition I'll give to deregulation versus subsidy. We have said that we have deregulated. That means that we are out of subsidy completely. We are not subsidizing PMS anymore. We are actually trying to introduce an alternative fuel, which will even be cheaper in the long run than PMS.
But when you say, I mean, during the one before this, the meeting that the federal government had with Labour, you said that the government, we have not fully deregulated because of the concerns the government has for Nigerians. In fact, you went on to say that the price of fuel could go up to 183 naira per litre, going by the current rate of the dollar, which is why I ask, is there still any form of subsidizing still going on? And like you said, it has not been fully deregulated.
Well, no, at that time, what I meant was that we were transitioning, and, you know, we didn't go to the full extent, because you see that the subsidy was taking place at two ends. At the pump, we were subsidizing, and at the FX end, we were also subsidizing. So you have to access, NNPC accessed FX at a lower rate and imported the product. And then at the pump, we also further subsidized. So at this point, what we were saying to them, I remember in that occasion, was that the FX situation, if you look at the FX situation, where we are, where we were was still not where we should be, but because we were mindful of the fact that we were transitioning from a subsidy situation to a deregulated situation, we needed to tamper the situation, and government was still taking a little bit of that FX subsidy, at least the burden of that FX subsidy. And of course, we want to carry on with this for a while until we're able to roll out the alternative fuels, so that Nigerians can move on to that alternative, and then we know that we would have gotten to a point where we can actually back out fully. But at the FX level, if you look at the situation today, and if you do the math, you'll find out that we are still not exactly where we should be. I say that, yes.
So that is to say that the government is still, in some sense, subsidizing, well, at the FX level, maybe not at the pump price.
I would rather say the government is just transitioning.
Well, because subsidy basically means you get things cheaper. There's someone paying for it, so you as a consumer, you're getting it cheaper. So in the regard of the FX, just to, I mean, like you said, communication is key. Just to allow Nigerians understand where we are right now. So when they look at the news, they say, okay, well, I understand what the government is doing. So to that extent, the government is still involved in the petroleum sector, at least in that area.
No, at the time I was speaking, we were at that point, but at this point, we are completely out of subsidy.
So, what is going to happen to the Equalization Fund, the functions of the PPPRA, and sundry agencies that perform those functions?
Well, of course, the PIB will take care of that. If you were watching, the PIB is already with the National Assembly. With the passage of the PIB, we believe that those agencies will not exist exactly as they are today. But let's wait for the PIB to be passed by the National Assembly.
To that, the PIB, but we just want to follow up on some of the circumstances concerning or surrounding how the petrol price stays and Labour's request to put in some palliatives to cushion the effects. One of the concerns or options raised was that the refineries have got to work. And one wonders, what's the thinking? Because, I mean, it takes years, some say minimum of 2-3 years, to get the refineries working. What do you plan to achieve, or what is the committee going to be considering in 2 weeks, with which Labour says, after which, if they don't see those signs, they may just get back to the strike?
I don't think Labour is expecting to see all the refineries fixed in 2 weeks. Labour is quite realistic, but what we told them was that, look, the refineries, we understand that this has been a big problem in the country, the fixing of the refineries. But when you even look at it from the historical basis, you also realize that the fixing of the refinery, or the non-functioning of the refinery, was also due to the fact that there was subsidy. Because you have a situation where a refinery was not operating optimally. You refine product and you sell at a loss, if you have to put it bluntly. So these refineries could not have functioned optimally and commercially. With deregulation now, we believe that the refineries can now function optimally, because they can now, I always say it's a chicken and egg situation. What do? Do you want your refineries to function after deregulation or before deregulation? I think in this situation, we believe that this policy direction will help the functioning of the refineries as well. Having said that, I also say, look, we have a timeline. We gave Labour a clear timeline for fixing these refineries. We are signing the EPC for Port Harcourt Refinery by December this year. And we believe that by end of next year, 2021, 50% of the Port Harcourt will be ready, 50%. And then by 2022, Port Harcourt Refinery rehabilitation would have been through. And then, of course, we will go on to Warri Refinery. Of course, the processes are also on, and we gave Labour a clear timeline, and they saw the workability of this timeline.
You know, for a lot of Nigerians, they keep wondering, why can't our refineries work? Is this rocket science? A lot of reasons have been given. Well, funds, for example, mismanagement and what have you. But it appears as though this government is trying to, tackle that head on. You have said that the country loses, well, at some point, we're losing ₦1 billion a day to subsidy. Now that that has been scrapped to an extent, does that mean that the monies that were meant to use to subsidize is being, for example, channeled into those refineries?
Well, look, we have already gotten the funding for the refineries. I mean, that's a separate situation. We are not waiting, because this, we are saying that the savings is going to be gradual, and is going to be plowed back into the development of infrastructure and other sectors. We've not ring-fenced that savings to pump into just the refineries, but the refineries are a commercial venture now. That is the way we look at them. We look at the refineries based on the deregulation. We are seeing the refineries as a commercial venture that will be funded commercially.
Speaking of the refineries, the Port Harcourt refinery, you said by December it should have reached 50%. So when will it be 100%?
I said that the EPC will be. I said the EPC will be signed by December this year. And then by 2021, we would have reached 50% of the rehabilitation of Port Harcourt Refinery.
Okay, well, still talking about refineries, part of the agreement with Labour is item number 6 under the deregulation of under the downstream sector deregulation. The agreement talked about the federal government facilitating the delivery of licensed, modular, and regular refineries. That's also a conversation that's been on for some time. Some had thought that with those ones actively working, we'll probably have some significant quantity of refined product in Nigeria as opposed to the imported ones.
That will help, I mean, but I always say that modular refineries will not be a complete solution to the problem. But we have Dangote Refinery also coming up, which we believe is going to be a big part of the solution. Dangote Refinery alone is 650,000 barrels a day. Then you have Port Harcourt Refinery, 250,000 barrels, with another refinery being planned for Port Harcourt also, which is 100,000 barrels, which means that will bring down the capacity of Port Harcourt to 350,000. Then you have Warri Refinery and Kaduna Refinery. By the time all these refineries come on stream, we will have an in-country refining capacity that will be able to cater for the needs of Nigeria, and will become even a net exporter of this product.
By the time those refineries come on stream, now that's the active statement for me. And like I said in the previous statement, if you say that the Port Harcourt refinery will be ready by, 50% ready by December 2021, when will it be 100% ready, as well as other refineries?
It will be by 2022. I said it will be ready by end 2022. Port Harcourt refinery will be ready.
Right. So that means that the other refineries might take even longer?
Well, it's about the same timing, but of course those processes are also still on. But I'm just beginning from Port Harcourt, because we need to sequence it properly. We don't want to handle everything at the same time, because that is the mistake that the previous administrations have been making. And of course, please, you have to be patient with us and allow us to do it properly and deliver these refineries to you in due time.
Yeah, speaking of which, I think in 2018, there was an agreement that was signed, I think, between Nigeria and Niger Republic. There was supposed to be a refinery, I think, in Mache, between the border, Katsina and Niger Republic. What's going on with that? Because it was supposed to be, I think, the third largest refinery after Dangote and Port Harcourt Refinery.
Those discussions are still ongoing, but I believe there is a problem around supply of feedstock from Niger. I mean, they are talking to their partners. You know, the problem, they have a different system in Niger, where their partners take most of the crude oil out of the country. So we are still discussing with them on how to get those refineries those refineries started. That refinery started, sorry.
So what was the target date now if you succeed with that kind of conversation?
I don't have a target date for you because the conversations haven't gotten there yet. Because we have to guarantee feedstock for the refinery before we can begin the conversation about target dates.
But you know, yes, we have those plans, and looking into the future in terms of mid and long term, you wonder just how viable would oil be? I mean, you've talked about that time and again, how viable oil will be, let's say, in the next 50 years. Yes, we're building those refineries, but what is the plan really if in the next 50 years, attention will be shifting away from petrol? What would happen to those refineries, for example?
Well, I'm sure that the investors have already done their feasibilities, and they probably would have gotten their numbers right before they are investing, because I can't say what is going to happen to those refineries, but the projection is that, like I said, oil is going to be responsible for less and less of the energy mix in 20 years' time. I mean, that is the projection, and you see. Europe and the Western world are trying to move to alternatives. But of course, we here, because of that, we are also transitioning to gas. We want to see how we can begin to increasingly utilize gas as our alternative fuel. And then we'll probably move from there to alternatives as well. Of course, you know that the energy world is always changing, and we are quite mindful of that. But today, we still need petrol, and we will invest in our refineries because we still require the petrol. When that time comes, that petrol is no longer the dominant fuel, we will know exactly what to do at that time.
As at August this year, there are about 27 valid refinery licenses, and many of which, from what we see here, are still valid. And then usually there are questions as to why is it that when government issues these licensing rounds, many get these licenses, they're not able to complete some of these things. What's government doing about this?
Well, I will ask you that question. Why are those refineries not able to take off? It is very clear. The environment was not conducive for investment because of subsidy. I mean, you should know the answer to this. I mean, it was not possible for them because you give licenses. People thought, oh, they can develop these licenses. Then when they do the numbers don't add up because of the subsidy situation. So all the refinery licenses that were not given were not able to take off. But now with deregulation, we are beginning to see a renewed interest in the development of refineries in Nigeria. And we believe that with this, with deregulation, you will see that will be a thing of the past. People will develop that sector because private investment, private capital will come in easily to that sector and develop it. I mean, you can see what is happening in the telecom sector is likely to happen in the refining sector. What is also happening in the banking sector, you see exactly what happened when those sectors were deregulated. We believe that that is also going to happen in this sector and create a lot of opportunities and jobs for Nigerians.
Well, Honorable Minister, could you shed some light on the buses that the ministry or government will be making available to labor? Well, yes, that has happened before, and many saw the way that went. So one wonders, rather than give those buses, CNG could be, to labor, what's wrong in encouraging states to have a viable or functional transport system which will stand the test of time? Because people may say this, that labor may have their shortcomings with these buses.
I agree that this problem doesn't begin and end with labor, but the intention is to give labor first some buses, up to 133 buses, and then we expect to go down, like you are suggesting, capture other states and other Nigerians. We believe that the immediate impact of fuel, the rise in price of fuel, the increase occasioned by deregulation is on transportation, and that's why we decided to intervene in this sector first. But the difference now is that these buses are going to be gas-powered. That means the running cost of these buses is going to be lower and it will be cheaper. There are private sector people who have also volunteered to participate in the program to bring in a lot more buses. The buses, it will not end with just this first set of buses that will be given out to labor. Private individuals and other well-meaning Nigerians will come into the program and bring in a lot of gas-powered buses that is going to bring down the price of transportation. Definitely it is known that if gas-powered buses run a lot more efficiently and cheaper. Dangote, for example, converted all his trucks to gas, and that brought down his operating cost by up to 50%. And we believe that these buses will be cheaper to run, and it will actually stabilize the transportation sector.
Right. Now, two issues come up. I know that this is a drive. This is a major drive that you're pushing, and talks about green energy. It's cheaper, of course, and a couple of other benefits. But the agreement with Labour says that those buses will be made available immediately. Has that been done?
Yes, they will be made. Yes, definitely. Well, when you say immediately, it doesn't mean that it will be done yesterday, but we believe that within the next 1 month, that promise will be fulfilled to Labour. Now, that will be immediate enough.
Okay, well, different definitions of immediately, obviously. But the other side to that question is conversion. So if we're saying that we're moving into that phase where cars can run on gas, the average Nigerian has a car that runs on petrol, some diesel. So what's the plan really to transition into that phase?
Well, already there are a lot of private sector people that are partnering with us, and they are bringing in the conversion kits. Government is going to take the cost of conversion, but because of the participation of a lot of private sector people and the enthusiasm that we've seen in private sector, we believe that we can achieve this transitioning very quickly. We will transition to that to the usage of gas very quickly.
When you say the government will take up the cost, does that mean if I want to convert my car, it will be free of charge?
Yes, exactly. That's what we mean. We mean that we will have accredited stations for converting, and if you go to those stations to convert, you will convert for free.
How long is this free period, really? Is it for as long as, foreseeable future, or for a certain period of time? Because I imagine a lot of people asking questions now.
For the foreseeable future, because we know that this is going to be an additional cost, and government feels that we can take this cost from them. And then at least to encourage the process of converting as well, we're expecting to take this cost from the ordinary Nigerian that wants to convert his car.
So I'm thinking there's still a lot of questions. What will the process be like? Do I need to apply? Do I just need to go to the centers? Just take my car?
What we will do, we will advertise the conversion centers everywhere. Everybody will know that there are accredited conversion centers, because what we don't want is for quacks to get into this conversion business and create problems for us. So there will be accredited conversion centers, and the addresses will be put out, and then everybody can go to those centers and convert their vehicles.
So how soon will this start? Pardon me, this is a big deal, really, because we're moving into a new phase. So how soon will this start?
Yes,
and just how much will it cost the government?
Yes. We haven't looked at it from that point of cost, but I told you, for example, that there are a lot of private sector people that are willing to come into this business. You know exactly, you ask MTN how much it costs them to take away the cost of SIM cards. In the end, there are people who are interested in selling the gas. So if they convert your car, over time, they can recover the cost of your conversion from selling gas to you. The same way MTN can recover the cost of their SIM card card from your recharging your SIM card. I mean, I guess that is the way it will go.
Well, Honorable Minister, pardon me to take you back for just a little bit. We talked about the refineries just before we went on break, but someone just sent a message in asking what happened to the turnaround maintenance, the money budgeted for turnaround maintenance for all refineries in the country in the first term of this government?
Frankly, I can't give that answer now, but right now we're not talking about turnaround maintenance. We're talking of rehabilitation. I mean, the situation is that these refineries have got into a state where it is not just turnaround maintenance that these refineries require, it is outright rehabilitation, and that is where we are. I really can't say from the back of my hand what amounts were budgeted earlier for turnaround maintenance and where that money is.
Okay.
So, but will there be, would you be getting back to us regarding that? Because, I mean, it's a huge deal. These are resources, the country's resources that have been budgeted for that purpose. So how would we know what happened to them?
Okay, I can check and get back to you on that.
Right. Now, when you've been busy recently with the PIB, for example, and I mean, you had to debunk saying that the NNPC will not be scrapped. But there are other questions, and you have privy to what is in that bill, what a lot of Nigerians don't know. So would like to glean from you what is there. So really, what is the game changer about this? You've talked about the Petroleum Equalization Fund and the PPPRA. I believe that they will not exist anymore as they are right now as a result of the PIB. What do we expect?
Well, I will not want to be dragged into discussing the PIB yet because it has not been presented on the floor of the House, but we expect that the PIB is going to make Nigeria a more interesting destination. I mean, if you look at it for the past 20 years, we've not had any significant investment in the oil sector. We've not had many significant investments in the oil sector because of the uncertainties around the amendment of the law. But today, once the PIB is passed, I mean, we will have that certainty introduced, and we believe that there will be a lot of investments into Nigeria in the oil sector. That is one of the changes that we expect that the passage of the PIB will bring. And also, one of the big things that will happen is also the development of the midstream sector. The midstream sector was actually absent in Nigeria because of the absence of fiscal terms for the midstream. But now the PIB is going to introduce those terms, and we believe that that sector will also grow exponentially.
Well, Honorable Minister, we began this conversation by talking about the fact that there is a need to converse with Nigerians so that they can take ownership of and buy into the policies of government. It might just be a good idea to give us just a glimpse. Yes, which is what we're doing now. You've talked about this midstream sector being created, upstream, midstream, and downstream. So it'll be good to know how this midstream will benefit Nigerians in the long run, not just bringing in the investment, but how will it benefit the ordinary Nigerian on the streets in the different parts of the country, because I think this will also help them to understand what government is doing for them, so that when there is agitation for passage of the PIB, they themselves can understand and then they can buy into it. So could you please give us some education?
Well, let me just give you an example with pipelines, which constitutes the part of the midstream, pipelines. The problem with the downstream sector in Nigeria has been, well, with most of the petroleum sector in Nigeria, it's actually the health of our pipelines. Now you have a pipeline that takes crude from the south to Kaduna Refinery. That pipeline has never been healthy because, of course, there are a lot of breaches along the way. Now, with the midstream properly developed, it means that people can own those pipelines, so that you actually decouple the pipelines from the refinery, so that the owner of the refinery is not saddled with the responsibility of also managing that long length of pipeline. So a Nigerian who wants to invest in a pipeline network can just invest in a pipeline network and focus on the security of that pipeline, So you can imagine that that is going to allow the refineries to function better, because the pipelines will be owned separately from the refineries, and Nigerians can invest separately in the pipelines. So you can see how pipeline development, and if you free up that space, it's going to really help the growth of this industry. For example, I can now go to an estate and build a grid, a pipeline grid for gas. And then, of course, I will pipe the gas to the homes in that place. Well, if it's an estate, I build the pipeline grid within the estate. And then I pipe the gas to the homes. And I just sit there, and then I put the gas straight to the homes, and people will, of course, get the gas delivered in their homes. And I sit back, and I just collect the tariff from their usage of the gas that is piped through my pipeline. I don't even have to own the gas. But once I own the pipeline, that now will open that space, and a lot of investment will come. So you see that the midstream sector, which of course constitutes a pipeline network, will really help the health of this industry. That's just an example, for example. That's just an example.
Well, there is also this CNG that you're talking about now. Is it part of the? I imagine that is the part of the larger plan of what you call the National Gas Expansion Program that's included in the Economic Sustainability Plan, is it? Yes,
CNG is, we have three streams of gas. You have the CNG, compressed natural gas, LPG, and LNG. And these are all going to be delivered. So you can either convert your car to CNG, you can convert your car to using LPG, or you can convert your car to using LNG.
Okay, now the Economic Sustainability Plan has that component of this CNG and a number of project elements that are there, and the implementing structure of government is the Federal Ministry of Petroleum Resources and the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC. Could you give us a picture of how far is that going to go? Because we understand it's to maximize domestic use of CNG while reducing reliance on refined petroleum products like kerosene and PMS that you have talked about earlier. How far-reaching will the conversations be, especially with the states and the various subnationals?
Well, it is not just CNG, it is CNG, LPG, and LNG. But also, if you look at the Economic Sustainability Plan, it's not just about auto gas. It's also about, it's about our gas penetration in Nigeria. If you look at household gas, we are also not really in a good place in Nigeria. We have one of the lowest gas penetration in Africa. And we're not talking about the world now. We're talking about Africa. We have one of the lowest gas penetration. So the Economic Sustainability Plan is not only looking at auto gas, it's also looking at how we can get more households to use gas for domestic purposes. So we are going to have MDCs, for example. That's another leg of this program. We are talking about auto gas now because of deregulation, but we are going to have micro distribution centers in various parts of Nigeria and allow people to access domestic gas easily and cheaper, so that we can encourage the use of gas even in the rural areas. For now, what we are seeing is that a lot of people are discouraged to use gas in their households because of the upfront capital outlay. First, you have to buy the cylinder. You have to buy the gas stove. And in the end, you are investing over 70,000 naira just to be able to have to cook, to have the cooking utensils. I mean the gas stove and the cylinders. Now, what we are trying to introduce is a situation where you go to an MDC. The MDC, which is a micro distribution center, you actually pay for a rental. You have to, instead of buying the cylinder, you actually rent the cylinder, and then so that initial capital outlay will be reduced, and then you take the gas home. Then before also, when your gas, when you run out of gas, you go out and you have to order a full gas cylinder. This time we are also going to introduce the fractional filling, so that you can go and you can fill half a bottle, you can fill a quarter, and then so people can use it. Before now, people can only do that with kerosene. You go, if you don't have enough money, you buy half a liter. You can buy a bottle of kerosene. You can even buy half a bottle. But we are also introducing this fractional filling in that household gas usage sector, and we believe that that's going to also encourage the use of gas in the rural areas, and it will improve our penetration. It's a holistic program. It is not just auto gas. When we are rolling out auto gas in a few weeks, in a few days from now, and by end of October, we'll also be rolling out the LPG for households.
But the concerns that they had about appropriate pricing for gas and gas flaring, how have those been addressed?
Well, we believe that when we start the process, it's going to really, it's a matter of demand and supply. Right now, the supply, a lot of this gas is being exported. We're trying to bring all that gas back into the country. And when we have enough gas in the country, it's going to push down the price of gas as well.
Well, the ESP says it's a 12-month plan. Are we hopeful that before August next year, this is all over the place?
Well, we will make a start, and we believe that by that time things would have taken root and things would have orbited. That means they can actually move on their own. We actually, the economic sustainability plan is actually a reaction to the effect of COVID-19. We believe that Nigerians have the resilience to stabilize quickly, and once the situation stabilizes, they don't even need these interventions anymore.
Can we achieve all of this without steady power supply?
Frankly, I don't want to go into discussing the power sector here. I am not competent to discuss the power sector, because you know that that is within the purview of another ministry.
I know, Honorable Minister, but it will hugely affect all the plans that you've got. So if that is not there to rely on, a lot of these plans
we are also working on stabilizing power, definitely, as a government. I can tell you that.
Okay, because I know that there have been several targets that have not been met, and so there will always be concerns and questions as to how do we ensure that these targets can indeed be met, so that everyone wants to be happy with these plans.
But as I said, you have the chicken and egg there too. How do you start the power sector? Is it growing? Is it not growing because the tariff system is not supporting the inflow of capital into the sector, or is the capital inflow going to make the sector grow? You have to look at it from both ends and see whether the increase in tariff will actually help the growth of that sector or not.
Well, there's a bit of confusion at the moment. I know you talked about the PIB, how the PIB will address the PPPRA, the PAF, which may not exist in the way it is. But people are confusing. But they thought the president just reappointed the PAF boss. And so if the PIB will address this, what do we expect?
Well, it is still existing now until the PIB is passed. So if it was reappointed, it just means that it will continue until the PIB is passed.
So should the employees of those agencies be worried, as it were, with this PIB? Because as you'll understand, there'll be some kind of apprehension hearing some of this news filtering in. So what should they know right now?
No, the employees have no need to worry at all, because that has been envisaged by the PIB, and nothing will happen to the employees at all.
Right. Now, in terms of certifying which filling stations will dispense the LPG, LNG, and what have you, there are filling stations, for example, that are close to residential areas, and there's that drive for them to naturally want to be a part of this. So in terms of giving some form of certification to those filling stations, what are the considerations being made?
Well, DPR will actually do that job to ensure that filling stations meet with all the conditions before they can install LPG or LNG or CNG.
I know that you also talked about there's been different drafts over the past 20 years of this PIB, and so it got so many people confused. But in terms of still speaking about what to expect from this one when it does fly, several stakeholders, they suggest that they would like to see a provision in the PIB that will allow for cash call payments for JVs as a first line charge at the Federation account. Will that happen?
Well, as I said earlier, I do not want to go into details of the PIB. It will soon be a public document, and of course, there will be opportunities during the public hearings for the public to express their opinion.
So would they be expected to express opinion in terms of whether or not they will see specified in the PIB the processes for licensing rounds, who owns them, and where it goes? Should they expect to debate on that as well?
It's a democracy. I mean, once the National Assembly starts with the public hearings, I believe that Nigerians will be free to express their opinion in every aspect of the PIB.
Because some people are wondering what happens to landowners, for example, in those areas where, you know, there are pipelines, and you say Nigerians can invest also. So they're asking, in fact, there are a couple of questions that have been sent in that. What happens to us? Will there be an agreement we'll have with those investing, or will that be outrightly, you know, be managed by the government?
You're actually asking these questions as if we're at the public hearing already.
Well, you understand that Nigerians...
Yes.
The truth is Nigerians want to know at least what is in that package, so they know how to approach it moving forward. And like we said, as much as, yes, there will be a process to it, you are privy to those information. So we don't begin to have the wrong information spread around. It is always good to have you clear the air so the wrong things are not pushed out.
No, it's important to sequence things properly. I mean, if the PIB is already with the National Assembly, it's not in my place to announce the details of the PIB. The National Assembly is going to read the letter communicating the PIB to them today, I believe. And if they do that, it will be in the public domain. So why are we in a hurry? Let's just be patient, and the PIB will be in the public domain very, very soon.
All right. Well, it's just good. I mean, you talked about this being a public hearing. I'm wondering, this is public, the public is watching, but let's leave, and they can hear us. But let's take this, forgive me, let me take you back to what you said about the CNG buses to labor. There are 3 steps in that particular item on that agreement with labor. It said that the buses will also be dispensed to major cities and then to all the states. I'd have conversations started with the subnationals, because that partnership will definitely be very relevant if the plan is to be sustained. So what's the conversation with the states to ensure that this mass system works and is sustainable?
I believe the governors are already on board, I believe. I think that everybody understands that this is a necessary policy direction, and we will start at the national level, and the states will also take it up from there. All we need to do is to ensure that, for us, our interest now is to ensure that people can have gas in the stations. And that's what we are really concerned with now. We will roll it out in the next few days, and we expect that it will also be rolled out at the state levels and even at the local government levels in the coming months and coming weeks.
All right, then. We'll look forward to seeing how all of these policies crystallize to the benefit of all. We do thank you for coming on, Honorable Minister for Petroleum, Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Timi Peresilva. Thank you for talking to us today, and we wish you all the best.
Thank you.
All right, and don't forget, we did put out a poll. Haven't seen how some persons were responding to some issues about labor, whether or not they should have called off, suspended That's the word Labour used. They say, no, it's suspension, not called off. So, in their words, should they have suspended the strike? Just hit any of this button and then tell us. We'll articulate your thoughts. So we're going to go and let them know, even if it's a cross-section of Nigerians who are voting. It's time to focus on education. I mean, it's a bedrock. A lot of development can happen. And a lot of things can go wrong if you don't get it right with education. So today, we've got the Executive Secretary of TET Fund, Professor Solomon Bogoro, joining us from our studios in Abuja. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. Well, there's been...
Thank you.
All right. Education is key. I mean, yes, there's been a lot of focus and highlight about that. But in spite of all that TET Fund is doing, we still have challenges. So could you give us a picture? Where are we at the moment in terms of getting our education system, albeit the tertiary one, to the level where a lot of people can indeed say TET Fund is making an impact?
Thank you very much for that first question. And I'm happy to speak on this issue, coming a few days after the inauguration of the TET Fund R&D Standing Committee on Thursday, precisely last week. And yes, there would always be challenges, but that's why some of us have been given responsibilities to address those challenges. And this particular engagement on your station is coming barely 2.5 weeks after the University of Ibadan was rated among the top 500 universities in the world, the first of its type in this country. And we are hoping that more universities will come up. Let us reflect over, I think, just about 1.5 months ago, Mr. President, in sending a charge on the remaining about 3 years of his tenure, running up to 2023. He listed a number of priority issues to address. And the very first of all of them was quality education. Yes, we have been conscious of that, and we've been doing precisely what we need to do, those of us in the tertiary subsector, and especially from TET Fund, at a time we are talking about paradigm shift. Paradigm shift in terms of, yes, originally the ETF that is now in TET Fund was established to address mainly physical infrastructure that were in the first place virtually absent. And if they were in very poor state. So for a number of years, this has happened. And you would see physical infrastructure in many forms, whether it's lecture halls, libraries, Senate buildings, laboratories, equipped as they were. These have aimed to address the issue of quality. And I think going forward, we know that the rating and ranking of universities, which is a major reference to addressing the quality overall of education in a knowledge economy in the 21st century, dwells on quality of faculty. And this is why the paradigm shift at TET Fund aims at addressing what we call the content components. And research is virtually the first to refer to. Of course, the quality of libraries, of course, journals, manuscript development, academic staff training, addressing the needs of faculty members, and so on and so forth.
Well, how does this research and development body or part of TET Fund tie up with the functions of NERDC, which is also focused on research and development of the education sector in Nigeria?
Well, I can tell you that whatever we are doing is consistent with what other agencies are doing in this country. We are in touch. The Honorable Minister of Education has given us the freedom to liaise and partner, even sign MOUs, as it were, with other agencies. If it were a ministry, for instance, we've done that with Federal Ministry of Science and Tech, realizing that for too long, the education sector might not have reached out adequately to other ministries and sectors in partnership around the subject of research, and that for an economy as well as technology, you cannot operate as islands and expect to get results that address collective needs of the country. So if you take a look at the inauguration of the R&D Standing Committee last Thursday, you will see the galaxy of representations across the MDAs, particularly parastatal and specifically research institutes in various disciplines, as it were, various sectors. That is to say that we have never pretended that we could go it alone, but that this is the first time, with the approval of the Honorable Minister of Education, to proceed to do what Mr. President has directed, and that is in a knowledge economy in the 21st century. If you are not competitive, then you are not ready to move along with the rest of the world. And that's exactly what we're doing. So we've reached out at that committee that was inaugurated on Thursday. Virtually, you can go on the military. You saw DICON, for instance, Defense Research and Development Bureau. We can go on and on. The Space Science Administration, etc. We're all there. And of course, not to talk about the Policy Research Institute, including NIPS, NICER, and all that. From the STEM perspective, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, of course, talking about STI, science, technology, and innovation. The collection of these people, as never before, represents a new direction, a game changer in the context of the education ministry now going out to partner with others. Because whatever we've been doing, I put it this way in my address. I said, for too long, we academics have operated in isolation, but we could not continue that way, because the outcome of research, unless they solve problem, unless we're undertaking what I call problem-solving research, we're not addressing national issues. And we couldn't do that without reaching out to the industry. Right. And that is why there was heavy presence of industry. And believe me, as I'm talking to you now, I mean, nearly 24 hours, the subcommittees are working. And they are happy to do so. Nobody is leaving his or her seat, because, as the Honorable Minister put it, they have been called to national duty. This thing has to change. Check out there, the most competitive economies have all been around the issue of deepening, getting the education more qualitative through deepening of research, and specifically R&D.
Right, now let's talk about the mandate of TED Fund as it is. Well, the Act, the Establishing Act of TED Fund says your mandate is to rehabilitate, restore, and consolidate tertiary education in Nigeria. I mean, sounds clear enough. But when you look at tertiary education in the country as we are right now, in terms of the mandate of TED Fund, how would you say you have fared, and what are those challenges specifically?
Thank you very much. I love to recall what happened between 1990 and 92. After ASU was banned and unbanned, banned in 1988, unbanned in 1990 by the federal military government at that time, then ASU went into negotiation with federal government of that time for 2 years. And by the end of 1992, agreement was signed, and the ETF, Education Initially Tax Fund, later by 1998, the law changed, Trust Fund, ETF, was there. Monies were collected and utilized from 1998 up to 2011, when it was realized that the monies were used sparingly because a number of unintended beneficiaries came on board. And we recall that the basic subsector also benefited. And then policymakers had to be reminded that the basic subsector should not be benefiting from the ETF because they are officially funded through UBEC. And so it was important that they are removed so that the tertiary subsector will have more funds for its beneficiary institutions. In fact, like we've always said, a number of non-education sector institutions were benefiting. That was unacceptable. As soon as the law was amended to refocus to the original concept, that is tertiary institutions, public tertiary institutions, and specifically, as it were, by our law, universities, polytechnics, colleges of education. It is, you could see very clearly that there have been more manifest presence when the strike was on between 1990 to 92, leading to the agreement signed between government and ASU. ASU had said that Nigerian universities were glorified secondary schools. And the first reference was fiscal infrastructure. And massively, there was evident emergence of fiscal infrastructure between 1998 and 2011. But my God, take a look at the scenario from 2011 to now. It's been even more manifest. So
right. If I could jump in at that point,
joke
then
out there is that
let me ask you, Prof. So
as well be referred
are you suggesting
to as TETFund universities?
I hope you can hear me, Prof.
College of Education.
Pardon me to just ask you this: are you suggesting then that ASU has or will have no reason whatsoever to embark on strike because TETFund is there to cater for the research needs of tertiary education?
Well, let me say this very clearly, that as a result of the performance of TETFund, there has been much less frequency of strike over the years from the 2011 period when TETFund came into being. And there is definitely no doubt, I mean, let's get it right, by the mandate of TETFund, don't forget we are an intervention agency. As an intervention agency, we are not supposed to be the main funders. But now our funding intervention is so manifest that sometimes people think that the only money going to tertiary institutions should be from TETFund. No. Of course, the personnel costs, recurrent funding comes mainly from the budgetary window. So there is no doubt about the fact that, yes, there have been some challenges that have led to issues of entitlements which are not the responsibility of TETFund. But I think by and large, the much less frequent strikes that have been witnessed over the last 9 years or so, as it were, is a reflection, I believe, of the presence of the intervention of TETFund. And we are hoping that with the paradigm shift, now putting more money on research and encouraging patents to come out of research, especially for science-based research outcomes, for uptake by industry. And then you have, the researcher getting personal benefit through royalties. I think I can assure you that there is likelihood of increased less restiveness in our campuses.
All right, just one moment. There was something you said earlier, and we're hoping that indeed this restiveness that you want to address would be addressed totally. But then when you say that strikes have reduced in universities because of the intervention of TETFund, and of course you also kind of alluded to the fact that the recurrent expenditure is not part of the things that you fund, I'm wondering how TETFund as an intervention agency has been able to intervene in the affairs of ASU with the universities or with government, because as you know, ASU is on strike at the moment. And if your intervention has been able to avert some of these, I'm wondering how come they're on strike now, if there was anything TETFund could have done about it.
Thank you very much. We cannot take responsibilities that are not our own. I can tell you that whatever we need to do to contribute to either stopping the strikes, we have tried to do, but ours is not supposed to be manifest because it's not our responsibilities. The ministry is there, and there are regulatory agencies. ASU is an Academic Staff Union of Universities, and the regulatory agency is National Universities Commission. And whenever, as members of the negotiation team that TEDFund is, whatever has been required that we need to do to contribute to amicable resolution of these strike actions, we have always done. And I remain positive that all that is being done, many of them behind the scene, I have had moments outside official meetings to discuss with the Minister, Honorable Minister of Education, and I can tell you one thing, his personal disposition to unions has contributed many times in strike actions being called off, and I believe that this will continue to be the case, and we are hoping and we remain positive that it may not be much longer that these issues will be resolved. And
but we also
focus on what we know how best to do.
All right. Now, speaking of what you know how best to do, on a final note, the funds. Some institutions say maybe the process is too tedious for them to access these funds, and they're wondering what happens if they missed the funds for a particular year. Can they retrospectively access those funds? Is that possible?
Yeah, well, if they missed it for a particular year, I don't know what would be the circumstance for that to happen. But I can assure you that we have no reason to revoke the entitlement of any beneficiary institution. The Board of Trustees, that by law is vested with the responsibility of administering the utilization of the funds through the intervention lines, has no reason whatsoever to deny any institution. But then, because there have been occasionally, we've noticed some embarrassing challenges in terms of very bad practices, poor response to our guidelines. I can tell you in terms of guidelines, I am happy to say this, that TEDFund today is a model intervention agency because of its very robust guidelines in the implementation of its intervention projects. And what I mean by that is that the guidelines are very clear in terms of ensuring and even anticipating breaches. And one thing is very obvious, that we have, you go out there, we've seen cases where very sadly, if some either an institution or particular officials in an institution, it could even be lecturers, infringing on some of the intervention benefits, as it were, whether it's academic staff training and so on, conference attendance. Yes, I mean, that reminds me, only recently we had to suspend conference attendance because there were malpractices. The Board of Trustees decided to suspend and investigate. Investigation has started. Reports will be turned in. And in many cases, we discovered that a number of lecturers would travel, would take monies for international conferences and fail to travel. This is unacceptable. When these reports were brought to the Board of Trustees, it decided, let's undertake the investigation. When we clear the issues, maybe there are loopholes. Let's plug the loopholes and go forward. We want maximum benefit for the lecturers.
All right, then. So there are several other issues that we will have to touch on at a later date, but we do thank you for talking to us this morning. Professor Sulaiman Bogoro, Executive Secretary of TEDFund.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure.
All right, then. Well, we did put out a poll asking you to tell us, vote, but we'll come back and tell you all about that in a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back. Well, we did ask you if you think Labour should have suspended the strike action, and there is how you all voted. Look at the percentage of those who voted about that, because there were so many people who were, well, a bit disenchanted about how this went. So 51%. No, I beg your pardon. 68%. Whoa, look at that. 68% actually thought that Labour should not have suspended the strike. 19% thought, well, yes. Just 13% were indifferent. And you know, there's several comments as well, but just several. There you go. That's what you thought about Labour. Let's now get on to the comments coming through about what you heard in the last hour or thereabouts. This one from Oluseyi says, well, the government just woke up about fixing the refineries. If all these have been done years back, we will not be where we are today.
Well, Kingsley believes our labor body has been compromised. Goes to say that we need a people-oriented mass movement to ensure those in government do the needful. Our politicians are only good at making empty promises, he says.
And this is what this comment is quite unfortunate, if I could say, is Mickey Slim says they could have gone on strike for a better and different cause. They just needed some reimbursement from Big Brother.
Well, this one is from, says she's Miss Stylebender. Okay. They suspended the strike based on reversed electricity tariff hike. What about the fuel and all other items mentioned? And they relevant as well, she says?
The way she puts it is just epic. But you know, our song here says NLC TUC are not acting on behalf of Nigerians either. So I'm indifferent because they're not organized. Talk about organized labor. Let them put their house building in order. Some of the comments to that poll we put out earlier.
And Taiwo sent this from Ilorin and says, it's better to disenfranchise few individuals through electronic voting with credibility than allow a process that gives all individuals and even more the same electoral will, you know, that is not reflecting the wish of the people.
Well, look at this one from Henry. It says, how can this knowledge-driven economy and competitiveness thrive under the suffocating regime of federal character with its selective discriminatory practices that are supportive of innovation and excellence? I need an answer. Well, we're going to like you to give us an answer about this poll, which we put out there for you ahead of our big Independence Day anniversary. We did ask you, as Nigeria celebrates her Diamond Jubilee, what policy would you want to see adopted if we were to strengthen that theme together as being put out there by the government? So just go out there and vote already. We've seen so many people voting this. Do you want a single-term presidency, allow a referendum, expunge state of origin? What about votes by Nigerians in diaspora? Who knows what the end result will be? Well, you might have seen a little bit of it, but don't forget, we will be back again tomorrow. Thank you for watching. I'm Chamberlain also.
I'm Kayode Okikiolu.
And I'm Ayo Makinde. Please be safe. Have a good day.